Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT08, and BT08 offers us lots of new and powerful cards to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the Shivamon deck. So green Shivamon is looking to be a pretty interesting deck, especially for green, because it's a different take on green, where you're still trying to do the basic 1-2-3s on go up your stack as quickly as you possibly can. And you still have the ability to suspend and control the opponent's field, but the idea is you're going to want to try to have Shivamon sit on the field, suspended, so that way you could try to limit some of the opponent's actions while passively burning the opponent. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Argomon. So this is the BT2 Argomon, and this inheritable ability is pretty good at just trying to help us gain some additional memory. Now, I haven't really noticed the big difference between the two Digitama, so you could kind of play around with them as you want, but I just like the memory gaining off of Argomon. It states that during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your unsuspend phase, then you get to gain a memory, and if the whole point of our deck is to have Shivamon be suspended, then he's going to be unsuspending, and Argomon just makes sense to try to make your plays as efficient as you possibly can during your turn, while this is sitting on the field as an inheritable underneath the Shivamon. But if the idea is to have Shivamon be suspended as the primary line of play that you're going to be trying to do, then Bibimon from BT08 is a really good card to complement it as a good supplementary mega. Again, you can make this the main mega if you really wanted to. It doesn't necessarily matter as much, but this card has a nice inheritable ability, more specifically for Shivamon, where during the opponent's turn, while all of your Digimon are suspended, then this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP, making it a little bit harder for them to want to try to hit into Shivamon. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Argomon. So this is the level 3 Argomon, and this card is in the deck just because it's a really tempo efficient card, because it has a low play cost, low evo cost, and some decent DP, so that way we could be relatively aggressive with it or try to climb our stages and get into our Shivamon as quickly as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Terriermon. So Terriermon is just the anti-meta card that we have to be playing around with to act as a really good passive ability, where during all turns, the opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects, which is really important because there's just a lot of memory manipulating shenanigans. So any way we have to shut it off and stop some of the opponent's actions is really good, slowing them down, so that way we can make our plays a little bit faster and more efficient than theirs. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Pulsemon. So this is the brand new BT08 Pulsemon, and this Pulsemon is green, so that way it could be ran in the Shivamon deck. And this card is a really good card for Shivamon because it's acting as a really solid DP boost, where its inheritable ability states that during all turns, this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP for each of your other Digimon that are suspended. So the more Digimon you have on the field, especially if they're suspended, then the more powerful your Shivamon is going to be, not only when it's trying to attack into the opponent, but also when the opponent is trying to attack into it, because it'll have a larger body because of this inheritable. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Tentomon. So this is the starter deck version of Tentomon, and this is just a really solid draw engine for the deck to help with its overall consistency. So its on-play ability states that we get to reveal the top card of our deck. If it's a green Digimon card, then we get to add it into our hand. Otherwise, it'll go to the bottom of our deck. So it's just trying to help out find our Digimon to make our plays more consistent. And speaking of consistency, next on to the champions, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Namakemon. So this Digimon is a pretty interesting Digimon because it's one of the few instances where Digimon's just going to sit on the field, and it has a more active ability instead of a passive ability. So its main ability states that you get to suspend this Digimon to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you get to add 1 green Digimon card from among them into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom. So again, it's just trying to help with the overall consistency, but the fact that it's a really easy level 4 to hard play, and use for its passive ability while then digivolving it suspended, so that way we could try to trigger some of our various other abilities or just have the body suspended, makes it a really valuable card for the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Exermon. So Exermon is another card that's trying to help DP boost our Shivamon, so that way going into the opponent's turn while Shivamon is suspended, it's going to have a really big body, so it's going to be harder to clear for the opponent. but what this card is doing natively is when you Digivolve into this card, we get to suspend one of our Digimon to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, which could be really, really powerful because it's acting as a really solid control tool for us to use. So that's kind of why we want to run certain cards like Argomon, where it's just a really easy card to hard play, so that way we could try to get this type of ability off and have a card to act as our fodder to suspend for some of our various abilities. Then its inheritable ability, like I stated before, is going to be a really good card to try to make Shivamon as powerful as it possibly can be, not only during the opponent's turn, but during our turn as well, where during all turns, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for each of your other suspended Digimon, so it's doing the same type of thing as Pulsemon, just trying to make itself as large as it possibly can, depending on what our board state is. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Kogamon. So Kogamon is a 2-color Digimon utilizing purple and green. So if we really wanted to, we could try to think about utilizing a few purple cards or transition into purple, but that's not the primary purpose of what this card is trying to do. This is, again, trying to make Shivamon as annoying to deal with for the opponent as you could possibly make it, because it has the inheritable ability of retaliation. So while Shivamon is suspended, if the opponent is going to try to attack into it, then they're going to lose whatever Digimon is bigger than Shivamon. So between all of our buffs and retaliation, we can make Shivamon an absolute nightmare for the opponent to try to deal with. Next, on to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Argomon. So this is the level 5 version of Argomon, and even though this card is limited to 1, it's still just that good of a card to use, because Digisorption 3 is still just a really, really tempo efficient to try to get up into our higher stages relatively easily with. So Digisorption just allows us to suspend one of our Digimon on the field to reduce his Digivolution cost by 3, making him effectively 0 to Digivolve into, so that way we could Digivolve right away into Shivamon, and Shivamon will be suspended when we Digivolve up into him if we're using the Argomon to suspend itself. Then it also has a nice inheritable ability of when attacking, where you get to play 1 level 3 green Digimon from our hand suspended for free, so it just combos very nicely with what Shivamon wants to be all about, which is having our Digimon suspended to gain various other buffs and benefits. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Blossomon. So Blossomon is the other big Digisorption 3 card to try to make Digivolving into our higher stages as efficient as we could possibly make it. And speaking of more Digisorption, next I'm going to be running 4 copies of Pistmon. So Pistmon isn't as tempo efficient as the other Digimon. He only Digisorbs for 2 instead of 3, so he's going to at least Digivolve for 1 into a level 5, which is still relatively tempo efficient. But he does have another all turns ability to try to make our Shivamon as strong as it possibly can be, that we saw with Exermon and Pulsemon, where during all turns, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for each of our other suspended Digimon, so it's just another way to try to make our Digimon as large as it possibly can. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Nidhoggmon. So Nidhoggmon is still one of the best payouts for green to go into with its level 6s, just because its Digiburst ability is that good at trying to control the opponent's field. So it has this when Digivolving ability of Digiburst 4, where you get to suspend all of the opponent's Digimon with 5000 DP or less, and then we get to place all of the opponent's suspended Digimon back to the bottom of their deck in any order, and then trash all of their inheritable sources underneath those Digimon. So it's just a big board clear to try to reduce the amount of threats that the opponent has on their field. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Shivamon. So Shivamon is going to be the big boss monster of the deck and what the deck is solely focused around, because its 2 abilities are just that good for us to want to try to take advantage of. So its first ability is a ability that triggers during the opponent's turn, where while all your Digimon are suspended, then the opponent can't use option cards. So reducing the amount of cards that they can play just, again, limits and controls some of the actions that they can take, forcing them to actually attack into Shivamon. Then it also has another ability where during your turn, when this Digimon unsuspends during our unsuspend phase, then we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security stack. So it's just trying to passively burn the opponent down, so that way we could try to deal as much damage as we possibly can. So you could swing with this card and then have it be suspended, or you could use this card as Digisorption fodder to go up into more Shivamons and various other Digimon. And then the last Digimon and only level 7 of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Chaosmon Valdur. So Chaosmon Valdur, like Nidhoggmon, is really only in the deck to add some extra control elements to try to delete some of the opponent's Digimon. So it has the nice when Digivolving ability where we get to activate the following effect twice of giving one of the opponent's Digimon minus 7,000 DP. So we could split this up between two targets and potentially delete two Digimon, or we could stack this on one big target to delete their big Digimon. And then it has the really annoying on delete ability of gaining 3 memory. So when this card eventually gets deleted, then we get to gain some benefit for its deletion. Next, on to the option cards, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Samādhi Śānti. So Samādhi Śānti is a 1-cost green option card that has the main ability where we get to suspend one of our Digimon down to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers. Then your opponent's suspended Digimon with this effect can't unsuspend until the end of their next turn. So the whole idea is we're going to suspend our Shivamon down to get our Shivamon suspended to turn the opponent's options off, then suspend one of the Digimon down to stunlock it, and then use our Shivamon the following turn to burn a security attack into said Digimon, and then have Shivamon be rested and be safe for attacking into that Digimon, so that way it can continuously try to burn the opponent's security, so you're not actually attacking into it in case they do have some really powerful options that you might accidentally trigger. But this is also really good at trying to stun the opponent's Tamers in case they are a hybrid-based deck to try to utilize their hybrids, and this card can help shut off certain lines of play. Then it also has the security ability where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers down, so it doesn't keep it down, but it's still just really good at trying to limit some of the opponent's actions and stop certain attacks. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Green Memory Boost. So Green Memory Boost is a really fantastic consistency card because it allows us to check the top 4 cards of our deck for green Digimon and then add it to our hand, then the rest will go to the bottom, then this card will go into the battle area for us to use the delay ability of gaining 2 memory at a later turn to make more powerful plays possible. Then it also has a really nice security ability to put itself into the battle area, so at worst, we could always try to get that 2 memory to make more powerful plays happen. And then the last card and only tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Mimi. So this is the BT01 green version of Mimi, and this card is really good at being a memory fixing tamer. So if our memory is ever less than 3, she'll just hard set us to 3, so that way we can try to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can. Then, on top of that, she has a really insane active ability that we want to use. We could suspend this tamer to basically get another raising phase, which allows us to accelerate some of our game plan to try to make more powerful plays happen. And then we just have a whole bunch of other cards to think about playing around with, depending on what you're trying to gain out of the deck and the types of cards you want to be utilizing. So if you wanted to, you could run something like a Bakumon, so that way Bakumon could just help us gain some additional memories for trying to stunlock the opponent's Digimon, keep them stunned, and attack into them. Then if we're trying to also think about attacking into the opponent's Digimon a little bit more, then we could run the starter deck Palmon to give us some additional DP to try to make it easier to be able to swing over the opponent's Digimon. But if you did want to just run some Insectoid-based synergies, then we have Tentomon and Terriermon to play around with to enforce that Insectoid-based strategy, because Shivamon actually is an Insectoid. So Tentomon helps us reduce the memory cost of our Digivolution when we're attacking with our level 5, which is ideally going to be Terriermon to Digivolve right away into Shivamon with. Then, if we are playing around with Insectoid-based synergies, we could also think about splashing in Terriermon and the green hybrids, because, well, green hybrids are already pretty decent, and Terriermon and the green hybrid stuff just allows us to go up the chain relatively easily while doing some very powerful green hybrid-based stuff. Then, to enforce the green hybrid stuff, we do have various other green hybrids that we could play on our level 4 slot, and we do have JP as a really good tamer to help turbo up into our level 6, which is the goal of what a lot of green decks want to do anyway. But if you want to have a little bit more fun with going up into your level 6, you could even think about shifting the deck to be more of a Jagamon high roll deck, where you're just trying to use the Jagamon-based effects to just lottery into your Shivamon, and we do get a lot of cards in BT07 to make it Jagamon's style of effect a lot more consistent. But if you want to try to have some really solid cards to help suspend themselves down, then we do have Ogremon from BT01 that has jamming. We could also think about playing the Argomon level 4 to use his Digisorption ability to, again, try to have extra ways at suspending our Digimon down. then we do have other really good cards to just hard play to not only just climb the stages with, but to just get a Digimon out on the field in the form of Roachmon, just because it has a low evo cost and a low play cost. And then we do get more cards that interact with how Shivamon wants to play, so if you wanted to, you could also think about playing Climbmon, which also kind of is an Insectoid, so it could help with some of our Insectoid-based synergies. So what this card is doing is it has a nice when Digivolving ability, where if this Digimon is suspended, then we get to return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon with a equal to or less DP than this card back to the owner's hand. So we could use this in combination with the Argomon to Digizorb into Argomon, have it be suspended, then Digivolve into Climbmon to be able to get this when Digivolving ability off. Then its inheritable ability is really powerful for the deck, where during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during the main phase, you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down, so that way you'll have a target for Shivamon to attack into, so that way it's not attacking into the security, putting itself at risk, making it safer to use our Shivamon's abilities. Then we do have some other Digisorption cards that we could think about playing on our level 6 slot. So we do have Ceraspawn if you want to just go hardcore Digisorption. We also have Argomon from BT2 and Argomon from BT5 that are really, really good in their own respects. And then we even have the promo Rosemon that also has a nice when Digivolving ability for going into this card and playing with our Tamers, where one of the opponent's Digimon can't attack or block until the end of the turn, so that way we could try to control the field and burn the opponent's security with our Shivamon's abilities. But if you do want to play the deck a little bit more aggressively, then we do have Chaosmon as an alternative level 7 to be able to use our alternative level 6s a little bit more efficiently with when their abilities are all said and done. Then green just has a slew of other really powerful options that we could take advantage of. So we could take advantage of Hidden Potential Discovered, even though this card is limited to 1, to try to help climb our stages with it even more efficiently. And on top of that, we do just have a whole bunch of other suspend options to try to help control the opponent's field. And then we do have various other Tamers that we could run in the deck, not only just because we're trying to suspend our Digimon, but trying to suspend the opponent's Digimon down as well. So Izzy is a really good card at interacting with suspending the opponent's Digimon down. And then, like I stated before, we could shift the deck to be more hybrid focused and run JP. But this is just my interpretation of a really solid core or shell for a green Shivamon deck to think about adopting. I think Shivamon is going to be a really underrated deck come BT8, just because it's playing the game a little bit differently, and having your Digimon suspended does leave them a little bit more vulnerable to be attacked into and controlled yourself, but Shivamon does have some really solid cards to try to help mitigate that weakness to make the deck as powerful as it possibly can. And even at worst, just having Shivamon sit on the field alone isn't necessarily the worst thing, because we'll still get all of its abilities and benefits, just maybe not as powerful as it could be with other Digimon to support it. So it's a really fun and interesting deck, and it plays a lot differently than a lot of other green decks, being a little bit more passively aggressive rather than actively aggressive. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.